When you feel real bad, when you rock
Yeah.
bottom, especially you're an alcoholic drinking however much a day to where I set my house on fire from
I think
drinking
I saw that.
alcohol. Yeah. I set my house on fire and lost everything. I didn't have anything to my name.
Wow.
And still didn't stop drinking.
Welcome back to another episode of Women of Tomorrow. If you are new here, thank you so much for clicking on this video. Women of Tomorrow is a platform dedicated to the empowerment of women of success and longevity. So if you like what you see here, please do us a huge favor and share, comment, like, and subscribe. Candyss!
Yes, ma'am.
I'm so happy just looking at your beautiful face.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This is
Yeah,
amazing.
I
feel so
agree.
blessed, so honored to have you here.
Same.
Wow. I just need to take a moment.
I love that.
Yeah. I want to get right into it because I don't have you here for long, and I want to make sure that we touch on as much as possible.
Yeah, I got time, girl.
I started watching your channel, I guess it's been about a year. And I believe, I'll be honest, the first thing that drew my attention is just the aesthetic. It was just so beautiful. You're so beautiful.
Thank
It was
you.
so glowing. It was so feminine. It just looked just like dripping with divine femininity.
I appreciate that.
And I was locked in, and then just to learn that there was so much substance and so much that I resonated with, so much transparency. It was the loving nature in which you speak, and how you've taken the time to create resources for us all to, get to that next level in life.
Yeah.
The people that are the spiritual seekers and really wanting to see what else life is about, outside of the box, that we've been kind of shown.
Yeah.
So just, having a chance to watch you, and then one day I was just like, fuck it, I'm just gonna reach out. And so for you to be here, it feels amazing. So thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you for welcoming me here.
Yes. Tell me, I want to just start with just like knowing, I know are you from Houston, Texas?
Yeah.
Born and raised.
Absolutely. Yep.
What was your childhood like? Like who raised you?
Yeah. Oh, that's who raised you. I love. So I'm an only child.
Okay.
I act like an only child. But I grew up and it was just me and my mom. I have a large family, but my mom was addicted to crack cocaine, and she was also alcoholic.
Oh, wow.
And my dad was an alcoholic as well. So my upbringing from the age up to 4 was shaky but full of love. But it was shaky based on what my parents were experiencing. My mom went away to rehab at the age of 4, and then I lived with like my aunts until she was able to come back and get me, which is so interesting because kids don't understand the concept of time. To me, it felt like I was living with my aunts for like 3 years, and it was just such a traumatic time for me because the change of environment. And then she told me she was only gone for 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And so I experienced a decent amount of trauma in the time that she was gone. But when she came back, it was just her and I. And we were best friends ever since. My dad was not able to end his addiction to alcohol. And even though he loved me, he didn't have the capacity to be present, even though he wanted to. So I had a beautiful childhood. My mom changed her entire life to make sure that she could provide for me in a way that I deserved. And I never went without. We had a beautiful relationship. I had cousins. My grandfather purchased a home for all of his kids. He had seven daughters, 7 sons. So everyone in my neighborhood had their own home. So you could walk down the street to all of my aunts and uncles' houses. So
Wow.
I grew up with cousins, family, barbecues. I had a very beautiful childhood, but it doesn't negate that is the starting ground of where trauma forms.
Yeah. And so was the trauma, I know that people use the word trauma so often, and often we think it's about like these big traumas, and sometimes it's just like trauma can be like a micro trauma where like maybe I felt neglected, or maybe like no one picked me up, or that kind of thing. What was the trauma that you felt? Was it just your mom not being there?
Yeah, it's very important that people understand that trauma does not have to be this huge,
Yeah.
catastrophic situation. It is the perception. And what happens is when a person doesn't have the capacity to understand or process an emotional pain, it becomes imprinted on the brain, and the brain tends to form more personalities, more personas, identities, trauma responses, so you don't have to feel that again. And typically people avoid it so they don't have to feel it again, and it's unconscious. So this can be anything. It could be something like me saying, why did you wear that today? Because a person doesn't have the capacity to fully understand or comprehend or process how what you said made them feel, it becomes imprinted on the brain. So it could be something very small and very simple. And because it can be something very small and very simple, there's many nuances to how many traumas and wounds a person has. So it doesn't even have to be the fact that my mom was addicted to alcohol
Yeah.
and she wasn't present. It could just be the fact that there was an opportunity where I was playing with my cousin and she's like, Candyss, your mom's on the phone. And I just burst out in tears. Me having to process not knowing why my mom wasn't present, not knowing why my dad wasn't present, why I had to stay at my aunt's house, why I had to eat foods. It even got to the point to where, I have a black family, and so they gonna cook certain foods, and my aunt made Sunday food every day. So like okra, all of that food that I did not like, and I developed a trauma with food that I didn't realize until I was older. I would mask it as saying I was a picky eater. It's not that I was a picky eater, it's that I was thrust into an environment, forced to eat foods that didn't resonate with my spirit, and had to sit at the table or fall asleep at the table until I finished the food. So that can
You were
just
forced to like clean your plate type.
absolutely. So that can look like, well, they just wanted you to eat so you can be healthy. But if it's not something that you can mentally comprehend and process, it downloads into the brain and it makes an imprint on the brain as an emotional wound, as an emotional trauma, because you don't know how to fully process the emotion that you feel behind the event. So there was a lot of, like you said, microcosmic aspects of wounds and traumas that I was able to experience.
So you just gonna give it all to me right there. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the way you broke that down, because that is something that I don't believe enough people are really taking the time to understand.
Yeah.
That we're all so unique in our experience, and it doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be just the tiniest little things. Like I was just talking to my mom today. She's in New Zealand doing working for a little bit. And I was talking to her about, my issue with authority. And I was telling her, I think it kind of started like at 6 years old, being in church and just really not resonating with how it was being carried out, the message, how it was supposed to be so loving, and how to me it just felt like it was more fear-based. And the people that were in the church as a child, I could tell they weren't necessarily happy.
Yeah.
And but I'm supposed to just go to church and be happy and, accept this religion and these standards and rules. And it just, and I don't think anyone really acknowledges that children can sense these things.
Yeah. One thing about, children are angels in the purest form. They're God in the purest form before they've been programmed out of who they are. So kids instinctively know. That's why they ask questions like, well, where did God come from?
Yeah.
And what do adults say? Don't ask that.
Yeah.
Right? Because kids intuitively know something don't make sense.
Yeah.
Something is not right. And they're asking questions because they have a deep knowing within them. And because adults don't have the answers, they program it out of them. You need to read the Bible. You're not allowed to ask that. If you ask that, you're going to hell. They just kind of brainwash you into believing and transforming into the masses of how everyone else thinks. But kids automatically know. And there's a short story. I don't even remember where I got this story from, but it's a couple who had a son who say is about 5 or 6, and they just had a newborn baby. They just got home from the doctor from delivery, and so they put the newborn baby in its room, and the 6-year-old son is like, I want to spend time with my baby brother. I want to spend time with him, but by myself. And the parents are obviously skeptical because they just got home, and they're like, okay. They let the 6-year-old brother in the room with his newborn brother, and they crack the door and they listen to what he says. And the story goes that the 6-year-old says, quick, tell me who you are. Tell me where you came from. Tell me where we came from. I'm starting to forget. And it is an indication that we instinctively know who we are, where we came from, why we are here, what our purpose was. But as time goes on, we begin to forget. But the purpose in life in general is to remember, give ourselves permission to start remembering. And that happens as we get older. Yeah.
I gotta ask you this based off that story because it makes me emotional. How? Because I promise you, I'm at that point right now where I'm like, I was talking to my mom. I said, I don't know what's going on with me, but I do feel distanced and isolated because I'm just like there's something more, and I'm still looking in search of that more, my purpose, why I'm here. And, she's a psychiatrist, so she was trying to diagnose me and say, well, this sounds like this. And I got frustrated with her because I'm like, Mom, you've been diagnosing me your whole life. I said, I think that the world, the way I view the world, I believe is more spiritual than intellectual. So thank you. But I'm not going to take that on right now. I'm going to go on my own path. But how would you tell someone to come to how do we start remembering? What are the steps that we can take to, I guess, flush out all of the stories, all of the things that we've, I guess, kind of trained ourselves to think like?
Yeah, this is it's a process. It's a process of unlearning. But I would say first, you have to start identifying and having the desire to identify your mask, your identities, and your personas. The areas where you are showing up and you're not being authentic. The areas where work is a trauma response. The areas where you don't really want to see yourself. The things that you don't want to fully acknowledge. The emotions that are still painful and you may not have the tools to really sit with. And when you start sitting with those things intentionally, in silence and in stillness, without work, without the worry of money, without the worry of family, a boyfriend, a fiance, a mom, when your journey is solely about you and you give yourself permission to sit in your darkness without running from yourself or without hiding in plain sight, then you can start to fill into what your purpose is, because now you're not clogged with lights. You're not clogged with work. You're not clogged with money. You're not clogged with love. Maybe love is not what's meant for you. Maybe money is not what's meant for you. Maybe success is not what's meant in this certain amount of time that you set aside to just sit with the parts of yourself that feel the less uncomfortable. And when you give yourself permission to do that and you really honor that, you can start to hear downloads of what is next. Downloads of what am I supposed to let go of? What am I supposed to add to? What areas are asking for more nurturing? What parts of myself are asking for more attention? That requires a lot of deep intentionality, silence, and nakedness. Giving yourself permission to not identify as Kayla, not identify as Candyss. Remember, when you go to church, they tell you what to believe. They tell you what your name is. They tell you what your race is. They tell you what your ethnicity is. They give you all of these labels to live up to. And then you do it. You live up to them. Even your mom, as you explained to her how you felt, she attempted to diagnose you and give you something to live up to. If I tell you you're autistic, 9 times out of 10, you're going to start taking medicine or doing things that help in person with autism. So when you start to give yourself permission to let go of all of these labels and identify what those labels are, you can really get the truth of who you are, and then you'll be able to know how to move forward as your truest self.
Do you have to be okay with saying, okay, so for me, for instance, Kayla, you're not a entrepreneur, you're not a podcast host, you're not a fiance, you're not a, like, do you have to be okay with not being anything that you are currently being in the physical world?
Yeah, you have to think about it. There's 2 aspects that we live in. We live in the human realm, and then we live in the spiritual realm. In the human realm, there's nothing wrong with that, but there has to be a balance of you knowing that none of this is real. Because if you identify with it, if you are attached to it, when it's taken away from you, you'll have a really tough time moving forward and finding peace. So the purpose is to become nobody. Ram Dass has a beautiful documentary and a movie, and he always speaks about becoming nobody. And it means letting go of the attachment to your identity and who you think you are and all of the things that are attached to that. And so if peace is having the titles of fiance, a beautiful job, or whatever the things is, if those are the things that bring you peace and happiness, then I would have to ask, what do you feel when all of those things are snatched away and you have no control over getting them back? The average person will struggle. And so when you detach from titles, names, objects, security, money, how much money you have in the bank, when you give yourself permission to not be attached to those things and you practice not being attached to those things, now you experience real freedom because you are okay no matter what comes and you are okay no matter what goes.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I was speaking to someone about, like, I guess, like, the difference in the physical and the spiritual, the human, like you said, and the spiritual. And because I battle with that, I'm just like, oh, I like nice things, I like luxury, I like all these things, but it's like, is that even real? And is that a distraction from my path? And one thing she said that was interesting, she was like, well, I mean, God brought us here in a physical body, so there has to be a reason, there has to be some importance to, the human experience. And it did make me think, like, okay, so yeah, we're here. We could have just been like, dust or something like that, but we're not. What do you think about that? Like, how do you balance, like, showing up beautiful physical form, but not letting that, take over and letting that be like the master?
Yeah. Well, we are the dust, right? We are the dust. We are the water. We are this. We are this. We are all of those things. So in the human form, there is absolutely nothing wrong with you being able to experience nice things. My mama just brought a brand new Corvette and you can't tell her no different. And every time I see her one up and get the newest thing, I'm like, she's enjoying her humanness.
Okay.
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The issue comes in when this is what is attached to your identity.
Okay.
And you have no ability to let it go. It makes you feel good about who you are to be able to say that you drive a brand new Mercedes, a brand new Corvette, when that is a determining factor of your confidence. That is a huge difference in being human and being able to experience things that come with humanness, or being attached to these things in the human form, because you can't take them with you. Even my husband has this saying, he's like, you can't even take your own body with you, right, when you go. So we have to have the balance of knowing the spiritual versus the human. Means I get to enjoy my human experience. The spiritual aspect is knowing that none of this is real. I don't have to attach to any of it to enjoy it. And I can give myself permission to enjoy it and let it go whenever it's time to let it go. If you have an issue with letting it go, if you have an issue with having the minimalistic life, if there's something that's that difficult for you because you are so attached to the other things, then that may be an indication that there's too much detachment and it's time to practice healthy detachment. Yeah, so that's where the balance comes in.
That's where the balance comes. So that requires a lot of being present in the moment. So you're able to being present in the moment. So you're able to identify when you've gone too far, when the attachment is so strong in the moment.
Yeah. There was a time where I was a police officer, and so my background is 10 years military. I served 10 years in the Army, and then
That's
7
wild.
years. 7 years as a police officer. And there was a time when I had just become a police officer and I brought a brand new Mercedes. My mom raised me to like nice things, but I didn't really care for nice things. It's just what my mom told me that I'm supposed to do. So it made sense. And then as I had my spiritual awakening and I started my emotional healing and my spiritual journey, I recognized that my ego was very tied to my Mercedes. It mattered that I drove a Mercedes. It mattered that people saw me in it. And to evolve, I knew that the things that were tied to making me feel egoic, prideful, in a way that didn't resonate with my spirit, I had to give it up. So I stopped telling people that I was a police officer, because telling them that and seeing their response made me feel good about myself. So I stopped telling them what I did. And then I gave up my Mercedes because I didn't want anything else to feed my confidence. I wanted to feed my confidence. And if I didn't have enough power to bring my confidence within myself, I didn't want to give anything else outside of me permission to do that. Because what happens is we start to perpetuate the idea that everything inside of us is powerless and everything outside of us is powerful. And so I had to start feeding myself with my own confidence and letting those things go.
Now, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask, like, the time that you were like, okay, I no longer want to be a police officer, and the work that you've done, like giving up your Mercedes. And oftentimes when change happens, it's something like traumatic to get people to change. It's like, they're not just going to change. It's not going to just be like, oh yeah, I don't need it. And how was that for you? Like, what was the turning point when you chose, I guess, a different path for yourself?
Yeah, I was in a very traumatic relationship, and all of my relationships, I wouldn't say they were traumatic, but they would always choose someone else. So in all of my relationships, the perpetual idea is that I wasn't chosen. And so I got into yet another relationship where I wasn't chosen. And I don't like to throw around the word narcissistic. I do believe that to some degree we all have some type
Some
of
of it in us.
narcissistic trait. It's just a personality trait.
Yeah.
And narcissism is just when you put all of them together.
Okay.
Okay,
Usually on
so
the scale, high or
yeah,
low on the
right.
scale.
It's just when you put all of them together. So the person I was with had a couple. I'll say that. And so it was a lot of I was 60 pounds overweight. I had absolutely no confidence. I was in the midst of my addiction to alcohol, and I hated my job. I hated my life. There was nothing about myself or my life that I loved other than my obsession and my attachment to this person. I'm not going to call it love because that's not what it was. I was using this person to make myself feel better.
Okay.
And that was a temporary form of medicine.
Got it.
And in that relationship, it was so traumatic. It was so abusive emotionally and mentally that I had to find a way to feel better. And through that is where I just kind of dove into all things healing, growing, and evolving. That became everything for me in my life. So it was like, when you feel real bad, when you rock bottom, especially you're an alcoholic drinking however much a day to where I set my house on fire from drinking alcohol. I set my house on fire and lost everything. I didn't have anything to my name.
Wow.
And still didn't stop drinking. So when you are at that level of a rock bottom and you finally give yourself permission to want better, when you get tired of your own stuff like that, you are at a place to where I don't care what it takes. I don't care what I have to give up. I don't care what I have to do, how much I have to cry, how much I have to scream, beg God to help me get to this next phase of my life. That's what I'm going to do. So that was the catalyst that helped me get to that point.
Often I hear that relationships are the mirrors, and those are the things that really show us the changes that we need to make for ourselves. I watch Purposefully Zenny. Have you seen her on Instagram?
I believe so.
She's cool, but she's like, everyone always wants to ask her about relationships and, who's my man, who's going to be my woman, that kind of thing. And she was like, I get it. Because relationships are what we tend to look for to feel accepted and to feel loved. It's not that we're just pressed to be in a relationship, but that's like the thing that validates us oftentimes, and it creates that connection that maybe we didn't have growing up and that kind of thing. So for you, that was kind of like the turning point, just kind of seeing how you were being in this relationship.
Yeah, because if you think about it, it's actually it makes sense that people want to be in relationships because you can heal by yourself. You can grow and evolve in stillness and solitude by yourself. But why are people so hypnotized by the fact of being in love? Why do they want it so badly? Why, instead of speaking about your healing, your individual spirituality, why are people so fixated on wanting to be in a relationship? It's because that's how divine alignment is designed for us to heal. People heal in relationships because we are reflections. And so we can't just speak about being reflections and not acknowledge that we heal the deepest when someone pinpoints the parts of ourselves that we can't see. Relationships, in my opinion, are only designed for us to be able to heal, grow, and evolve. Our relationship is only designed for me to help you see the parts of yourself that you refuse to see or you don't have access to see. And what happens is the love tends to be the icing on the cake. But relationships are mirrors, and they're only intended to be mirrors. And when we forget that, that's when the pain comes. That's when we stay in relationships longer than we were supposed to. That's when we end up having very traumatic relationships, situationships with people, because we forget that we're supposed to be in this relationship to learn our lessons, to hold space for one another as we heal, grow, and evolve. But if we're constantly looking for love, if we're constantly looking for medicine, if we're constantly looking for a person to put wounds or put medicine on our wounds, we'll always forget the purpose. So it makes sense that people want to be in relationships so bad, because the God in all of us is like, hey, you are the exact soul that I need to help me acknowledge I have daddy issues. You are the exact soul that I need to acknowledge that I'm still angry with my mom. And without you, I would never be able to notice that. Every specific relationship has a very specific soul level purpose. If it happens to end in love, great. If not, even greater, because now you have time to go on to the next person and the next person. And every next person you are in a relationship will drop off more gems, more jewels, more lessons. And the purpose is so they can continue to help you heal, grow, evolve, and to fulfill your soul's purpose. So in my relationship, as traumatic as it was, I knew that, oh, there's some things that I had to learn. It was a lot of things that I had to learn, but it wasn't my job to be upset at that person after the relationship, no matter how bad they treated me. I had to ask myself, why did I allow it? That is not me giving an excuse to their behavior, but it is me acknowledging that for whatever reason I entered this relationship, I allowed this relationship to happen. This relationship is specifically designed to show me areas of myself that I did not see. And it's pinpointing and giving me an opportunity and inviting me to dissect my own demons and find out what they're feeding on. And that's what relationships are designed for.
Ooh, that's so good. That is so good. So it's divinely orchestrated for us to desire them, because they will be a part of our evolution.
Yeah, it's not by chance that people want to be in relationships, but what you'll see is that once they've learned all the lessons they're supposed to learn, the desire drops off. The desire for a relationship is no longer there. They are in a place of surrender and acceptance. And it typically looks like, if a relationship happens, that's okay. If a relationship doesn't happen for me, that's even more okay. They become very confident, happy, still, and peaceful in their own solitude. And they're no longer chasing love, because they have learned those lessons and they are providing whatever it is they're getting from an outside source. They're getting it from themselves.
Yeah. Okay, so I have like 3 questions based off that, because this is so important. Is there a way to kind of tell when it's time, when you've learned all the lessons from that one particular relationship? Is there a way to say, okay, I think this one's done? It's
Absolutely.
What is something?
When it start getting difficult for no reason, it's time to go. Okay. What happens is, there are very specific lessons to learn. You don't have to learn the same lesson 5 times. You don't even have to learn the same lesson twice, right? These are typically red flags and intuitive nudges that people are ignoring, because they want to continue receiving the crumbs that feel like love. They want to continue feeling those small spaces that feel like love. They may only get it once a week, but to a person that is love deprived, that feels like enough. So people have to start acknowledging when enough is enough. These are very, very clear opportunities to acknowledge, we've come as far as we can go. I'm not getting anything else from this. This seems like it's more turmoil than it is love. It feels like I'm putting out more than I'm receiving, because love is transactional. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
But when it gets to a place to where it's not healthy, it's not hard to identify when a relationship is unhealthy. But when you continue to stick it out, you continue to keep trying, and you're not listening to when your intuition is saying you've gone as far as you can go, the relationship will get even more painful. It'll get even more difficult. It'll become even more difficult to deal with certain situations. And it's because you've overstayed your welcome. And so people have to start getting in contact with their intuitive muscle to be able to hear when their spirit says, get your ass on.
The intuitive muscle, building that intuitive muscle.
Yes.
How did you do it?
I started listening to myself and acknowledging the moments where I abandoned myself.
Okay.
What happens is, the body knows you can't lie to yourself. So I say all the time, liars don't heal. So if you get to a point to where you're like, for instance, I'm going to start working out on Monday. A Monday comes and goes, and you ain't did nothing. You ain't went to the gym. You ain't changed how you ate. Nothing. What happens is the body has now understood that you don't keep your word to yourself. And on top of not keeping your word to yourself, you don't love yourself enough to do what you said you were going to do. Another aspect is when we're asking for advice. Instead of consulting with our spirit first, ask your mama, your daddy, your cousins, your best friends, your aunties, asking everybody and their mama for advice, but you didn't even sit with yourself first to see, well, how do you feel about this? Is this something that you want to accept? Is this an opportunity that feels good to you? You dishonored your own intuitive compass and you honored everybody else. And this is how you send the signal to your mind, body, and spirit that everything inside of you is powerless and everyone outside of you is powerful. So keeping your word to yourself is how you start to build your intuitive muscle. Keeping your word and honoring your own soul's compass, your intuitive muscle, your intuitive voice. That's how you start to build that muscle in here, because you have so many, specifically women in relationships who know doggone well they don't have no business in those relationships. And they'll say all the time, oh, my gut told me, my spirit told me, my intuition told me. And they know that their man is cheating on them. And then they take them back and he do it again. Because they have ignored a very sacred part of themselves. And the consequence for that is they have trained their bodies that they can't be trusted.
Yeah, it's like we don't even require ourselves to love ourselves in the way we expect others to. It's like, no, you better not lie to me, but you can lie to yourself easily.
And that is what people typically do. It's like, I'm going to dishonor me, but you can't dishonor me. And the part that people forget is people treat you how you treat yourself. So if they see, if you don't keep your word to yourself, why am I keeping my word to you? If you abandon yourself, why wouldn't I abandon you? Remember, we're reflections. So when a person abandons you, mistreats you, or doesn't keep their word to you, it's not always sinister. Sometimes the soul lesson is maybe you should have kept your word to yourself, and then you train everyone outside of you that they have to keep their word to you because they see how you move and how you honor yourself. So sometimes how people treat us on the outside is giving us an inclination of how we're treating ourselves on the inside.
So is intuition, or following your intuition, building that intuitive muscle, listening to it, is that like a huge component of self-love?
It can be. Yeah, there's a lot of components to self-love.
What would you say like are, I guess, the main pillars, I guess, just beginners, self-love for beginners? Like, what are the things to, I guess, work on?
Accountability. Accountability is not too high on people's priority list. Liars do not heal. And when I say liars, I don't mean like lying about $5 that you found on the ground and picked up. I mean lying about who you really are. Lying about the truth of what you really feel. And it doesn't mean that the lie is sinister. It just means somebody can say, oh, that doesn't bother me. Liars don't heal. So you can never evolve if you don't actually acknowledge what you feel, how something affects you, how you treat other people, how you show up in the world. If you're actually being authentic, or if you're wearing a mask, a persona, or identity. So accountability is going to always be the first part, because that's where I have to own me.
You have to own who you are.
I have to own
And
Candyss.
you have to have some grace for yourself, because I feel like sometimes in the past, I'll speak for myself, it's like I might be ashamed of how I really feel. You know, like I don't want to even admit it. I'm so ready to fix it before I sit with it. I'm just like, oh, I'm insecure about this, and instead of like sitting with myself and say, it's okay, Kayla, it's okay, I don't even want to acknowledge it, and I want to fix it. And so like having some grace for yourself while you're acknowledging all the things that are just real in your reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, shame is Carolyn Miss, she described shame as one of the emotions that erodes the spirit because it's not necessary. And it is a taught emotion and it's not necessary to carry. And so grace, people throw out the word grace.
Yeah.
Grace is a practice. People have been shamed, guilted, embarrassed, beat down, just harmed in so many ways in regards to who they are and who they should be and how they should show up, that they don't even know how to give themselves grace.
Yeah.
When it's time, if grace was that easy, then shame wouldn't be present, right? People would just easily give it to themselves and they would just bypass the shame. But it's not that easy. It is a practice because it also involves you acknowledging and fully processing the emotions that you feel. It's not enough to just say, it's okay, Candyss, you'll get them next time. Okay. Now, when I say it's okay, Candyss, you'll get them the next time. But how did this make you feel? Why did it make you feel this way? What does this emotion remind you of? What does it feel like in your body? Why is this embarrassing to you? Really getting down to the root of what you feel, because a lot of times people are using even the term grace to bypass what they really feel. It's a way to like just brush off like, oh, it's okay, I don't have to feel shame, but maybe you should feel shame right now. Maybe you should feel guilt right now. Maybe you should feel embarrassed right now. Maybe you should feel hurt right now. These or jealous right now. These are all natural emotions that you are allowed to feel. And the purpose is to learn how to process these emotions the proper way, not rush to understanding. Because if you rush to understanding, the emotions are going to come back and you're still not going to know what to deal with them. And now you're going to be in a loop and a cycle of feeling the same emotions. Whereas if you start to cultivate the tools to start learning how to process these emotions, when they arrive, grace will naturally be present.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Do you feel it's necessary to be alone to cultivate self-love? Can you do it within a relationship?
That's a really good question. So I was single for 4 years and I was celibate for 4 years before I met my husband. And hey baby,
We love that for him.
yeah. And for me personally, that time was only for me. What I feel like is when a person is like so serious about their healing, distractions cannot come. They just can't. They aren't allowed, because you become so consumed with what your purpose is. Now, my purpose is healing, growing, and evolving.
Okay.
Other people may have different purposes. So in my purpose, my calling was to sit down, sit still, and by myself. And nobody else was allowed to play a part in that aspect of my journey. And then that solitude, that intentional solitude, is where a lot of my healing took place and prepared me for my husband. However, when I meet my husband, my healing becomes expedited because people are mirrors. They're reflections. They show you parts of yourself that you can't see when you're by yourself. So I will never say that you shouldn't be in a relationship if you are healing, because people show you the parts of yourself that you'll never be able to see when you're by yourself. However, if you don't have the capacity and the tools to be shown the truth of who you are and actually process it and deal with it and get into the solution of what you need to do to heal, so you're not projecting onto your partner, you don't have no business being in a relationship. A relationship is a safe space for two individuals who have a intention to heal, grow, and evolve in their individual journey, and they're willing to play a part and hold space for their partner on their individual journey. And they come together with the same knowing, I'm not going to interfere with your journey. I understand that I'm going to play a part in that, but your work is your work and your work alone. I can hold your hand. My husband and I, we call it walking each other home, because we hold each other's hands through whatever we experience. He has his individual experiences. I have my individual experiences. I know that he's there and I'm there, but we don't impede on that. So you can heal, grow, and evolve in a relationship, but you have to take accountability for your personal journey.
Yeah, okay. That makes a lot of sense. Going back to kind of what you said about like your 4 years of like intentional solitude, I wanted to touch on the integration of the light and the darkness and the sacred anger. I believe that's what, the love versus love and light, because they both exist, right? And they're both very important in the process of learning how to, I guess, return to yourself, your true self. How does that work? Or how do you look at that?
Especially when you're evolving with intentionality. Right now in the spiritual and self-help areas and conscious areas, it's all love and light. And it's like, oh, you got to do is just love. And, even last night I was speaking to someone and she was just like, love, 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 just send love, just send love. And I was like, love is not always readily available, and love is not always authentic, right? You have to arrive to a place of love. You have to arrive to a place of forgiveness. You have to arrive to a place of understanding. And so when someone constantly preaches love and light, they don't leave room for the darkness, which is where sacred anger lives, which is where explosive energy lives, and all of the other array of emotions that people tell you don't feel that, you should feel this. And it's not fair to the human experience, because now people are robbing themselves of opportunities to feel sacred anger because they're told that that's not a good emotion to feel. You're supposed to feel peace, you're supposed to feel love, and you're supposed to be forgiving. But it doesn't attest to the fact that people are allowed to be angry. And yes, they should have the proper tools to know how to process that anger. But when you only preach about love and light, you don't really set the ground for people to feel okay and at home in their anger. And it was probably last year when I recognized I had a lot of explosive energy, a lot of repressed anger, because I thought that being a good person meant keeping the peace. I thought that being a good person meant not rocking the boat, not causing any issues, not causing any conflict or participating in conflict. And then I had a few situations with family, friends, other individuals where, can I curse?
Yeah.
They kept fucking with me. And I was like, why me? Like, I'm out of my business. I'm not doing nothing. I'm trying to be nice to y'all ass, and y'all keep fucking with me. And I just could not figure out. I'm trying to be poised in my response. I'm trying to be nice in my response. And I'm responding in a way that I can be proud of. But I'm still practicing my arguments in the mirror when the conversation's over. And there's a lot of unsaid things that as I'm driving, I still remember that I wish I would have said, that they ass needed to hear, and that I didn't say. And so I recognized that for a long time, I felt like a coward because I didn't give myself permission to speak up for myself. And I robbed myself of opportunities to be authentic and opportunities to share my voice and opportunities to speak up for myself. And I did that not because I was just this nice, poised person. I thought it meant that I was a good person. And I thought that if I responded, I thought if I responded in these ways, people would see me as a good person as well. And then I just got to a point to where I was like, no, you actually need to be cursed out.
That's what I was gonna
And
ask.
I'm not mad about me cursing you out. I'm not even mad when I curse you out. At this point, when I speak my mind, because I'm waiting for people to do anything so I can speak my mind. I just did it last night and it felt good. Okay. So at this point, when I speak my mind, it's not because I'm upset. It is not because I want to go off. It's because I have a 17 to 21-year-old version of me. I never gave her permission to speak up for herself. I never gave her permission to say, that's not okay. It's not okay to treat me that way. It's not okay to talk to me that way, and you will not talk to me that way. I never allowed her to set boundaries. I always told her she had to be the bigger person. I robbed her of her voice. So now when opportunities present themselves to say something, I'm a talking Tammy at this point. And all of it is not for 34. I think I'm 34. It's not even for 34-year-old Candyss. It's for 17 to 21-year-old Candyss, because for me to integrate all versions of my being, I have to acknowledge the parts that still may have wounds that are still bleeding. And so when I speak up for myself, it's to honor her. And after every time I speak up for myself, I just sent somebody a 5-page letter in a text. And the whole time I was like, I didn't have to do that. But it felt good to her. She was able to speak her mind and what was actually on her mind. And after I say what I need to say, I close my eyes. I go into meditation, and I remind that version of myself that was for you. That is me honoring you, giving you the opportunity to use your voice. And I still apologize for all the moments that I didn't allow her to speak up for herself.
I love that.
Yeah.
So that is powerful, because same for me, like not wanting to avoid confrontation, wanting to, bring loving energy, supportive energy to everyone around me, and the whole time abandoning like what I really am thinking, because I've been afraid to see now when it's like everyone else can cuss and do everything, but when I say something, they're like, oh.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, so I refrained from being that person, because it's like, oh, they can't handle me like that.
Yeah.
And no, I've started to be like, okay, it's okay. Sometimes if I'm mad, I'm mad. It's okay for me to be mad. It's okay for you guys to catch a little smoke, from time to time.
Yeah, I love that.
And it doesn't mean anything but just what happened in that moment.
That's it. And I think that we also have to become okay with being the villain in other people's stories. And there's a quote, I can't remember who said this quote, but it says, if people wanted you to speak nicely about them, then they should have treated you better. And that is an indication that we have to live in our truth at all moments. And showing up authentically is showing up authentically in what we feel. Being poised was not honoring me. It was not authentic. It was not how I really wanted to show up, because even though I showed up and I was extremely poised, inside there was no internal peace. It was full chaos going on inside my body as I spoke politely, nicely, and in a poised way to the person who was dishonoring me and mistreating me and disregarding me and dismissing me. And that is not an authentic expression. So even back to your question of self-love, authentic self-expression at all times. We are allowed to honor ourselves in that way. And those that mind don't matter, and those that matter don't mind. If they wanted you to be nice, they should have acted like they had some sense.
Yeah, they should have thought about what they said.
That's it.
So wow, I just lost my little train of thought when you were saying that. But yeah, that very much so is the thing. So that's what I was going to say. So would you say that that at that time of being poised and not being authentic, that was like your mask or your persona?
Yeah. So remember, I have prior military and police. So a large part of that persona came from in the military. Before you make rank, you have to take orders from people that you don't like. And you cannot say anything. So you have to remain poised. In being a police officer, you are in many situations to where if everybody else is panicking, I'm not going to panic. And so I had such an exterior, even now, If all hell can break loose and you will not see me panic. And to the point, sometimes it makes people really uncomfortable. I had one lady when I was a police officer and something crazy was happening. She was like, "How are you so fucking calm?" And I remain calm like that because I've been trained to be calm like that. But now in situations where things happen, I'm still calm. My mom kind of raised me the same. When we would get into arguments when I was a young teenager, she's also an emotional abuse counselor, so she works with therapists all the time. And so we would have this thing where if you raise your voice in the midst of conversation, your hand will go up. And that was an indication to the other person that you are elevating your voice, and you don't have to do that for me to understand you so I can stay here. That's not always the easiest tactic to rely on, but it helped me remain very calm and with my tone of voice when I'm expressing what I need to say, almost kind of stoic. And it's also, I mean, it's kind of scary to me because I become very matter of fact. I say what I mean, I say what I need to say, and I don't stray from that. But it was a huge mask because it didn't allow me to yell if I needed to yell, express myself with my hands if I needed to express myself with my hands. The mask was such a construct that I didn't even know how to break out of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a huge persona.
Speaking of persona, I guess the persona or just the stigma of Black women, and what would you say to Black women who are really afraid to be stereotyped as angry, as just loud, and like I hear that so much. It's just like when we yell, it's a different story. It's either we're a bitch, we're angry. It's either we're a bitch or we're angry.
Yeah.
Like we're out of control versus
Right.
like, no, this is how I'm reacting to the bullshit.
Yeah. I think you get to discern in what world you choose to live in.
Okay.
And that's not a world that I choose to live in. So my world doesn't reflect that. And I think what happens a lot of times, especially with the Black woman narrative, it doesn't mean that it isn't true, but it does mean that if you attach to the identity, if you attach to the knowing, if you attach to the thought, if you attach to the belief, you will create that reality and it will be yours, and you will continue to attach to it, and you'll have to experience all the things that come with it. Every thought creates a new world. A new world emerges. And so you get to decide what reality you live in. You get to decide how people respond to you when you become angry. You get to create that reality, and you get to create it with your thoughts. You get to create it with your rhetoric. You get to create it with your words. You get to create it with your conversations. If the conversations continue to be, oh, Black women always have it bad, the Black women you come in contact with, they're going to always have it bad.
Yeah.
Right? That is how it, and so Black women also, this where accountability starts to come in.
Yeah.
Black women also have to acknowledge that if the words that they speak are powerful in every other aspect of their life, right? The words that come off the tongue create realities in every other aspect of their life. Every time they spew that same rhetoric, it continues to validate the reality that they are perpetuating with that rhetoric. And so if you
can't pick and choose.
Yeah, if you change the world that you choose to live in, if you start to acknowledge how beautiful your world is, you start to acknowledge how loving your world is, you start to acknowledge how there are people that actually want to hear me. It may not be this specific person, but there are beautiful people who are waiting to hear my story. There are beautiful people who would love to hear how I see things. They want to hear my perspective. They understand that I'm angry. They understand my emotion, and they sit with me in my emotion. That's a very different perspective than everybody hates Black women and Black women are angry. So we get to choose how we show up in the world and what worlds we create.
I love that. Me and the guys were just talking kind of like about that earlier, of just like there's so much being thrown around, like there's men ain't shit, women ain't shit, and then they're kind of both like, we were like, no, we know some good ones, and like, so it's what you decide to like feed into.
It really is.
Yeah. I want to get on relationships more in your experience of with sacred alone time, but before that, I kind of want to talk about the whole idea and what's going on now with independent women and how they'd rather not have a man. And from my experience and just what I've seen, women do want a man. They do want it. They want it really badly to the point. It's almost to the point where they're just not even aware that their soul or they're really seeking it. But it's the whole thing. Independent. I can do it on my own, and I make more money than most men anyway. That kind of thing. In your experience with, I guess, talking with women and meeting them, where do you think that stems from? And do you believe that it's gonna change anytime soon?
Well, it's a trauma response, right? So women have a very tough time with vulnerability. So you'll see that if you hurt a woman one time, she will morph into a completely different person. You'll get to see the truth of who she really is. And so if you have a large spectrum of women who have abandonment issues, neglect issues, attachment issues, they don't know what real love actually looks like, what it really feels like. The trauma response to the fear of not being loved is to reject it. And so this is why you have so many people that deep down in their hearts, they do truly want to experience love, but they are fearful of not being loved, and they don't actually know how to receive it. And so the easiest thing for them to do is act like they don't need it, because to be in love also requires you to be vulnerable. That means I have to express. It makes me feel like I don't matter to you when you don't text me back. Women won't say that. They'll just say, why you ain't text me back? Are you talking to somebody else? They won't say that it makes me feel insecure when you don't prioritize our alone time. They won't use those words because it requires vulnerability. But what happens is when you have so many women who've had to do things by themselves, when you've had so many women who've had to do I've had to do everything by myself before my husband. I had to do so many things, and I never acquired the I don't need a man rhetoric, but it does have a sense of false empowerment just because I don't know what it feels like to have a man do certain things for me. The money aspect, when women are like, I make more money than a man anyway, what they're really saying is, I'm afraid that I won't be provided for or taken care of. I'm afraid that a man won't take care of me, or he won't love me in the way that I need. So I need to hoard money. I need to work so hard to make myself feel better about myself, because money, working really hard, is a trauma response. And then the acquiring of money makes a person feel safe. Now I have to ask, who are you? Who do you become when you don't have that safety rug under you? When there's no money in your account, is that confidence still there? Or is natural vulnerability going to be present? Women have an extremely tough time being vulnerable, acknowledging that they do want love, and they want to feel protected, and they want to feel provided for. And the way that they go around about saying that is, I don't need a man because I already got money. And it's not true. It's just fear. It's fear of not being loved, and it's fear of not being loved properly. And they don't know how to go about asking for the love that they need. And they're fearful that if a man doesn't love them in the way that their wounds need them to be loved, then they will feel the pain that they are inevitably running from and using money and work to escape.
So they're rather stay in the area that at least they have some understanding of, versus reaching.
It's all control. It's all about control.
So many people. I'm so excited for people to hear that. I know women in their 60s that need to hear that. That need to hear that need to identify with their desire for that protection and that love. And they didn't have it, and they did well. But yeah, they want that love. And when you spoke about false empowerment, I believe that's what you say, false empowerment. That's very different from getting to the place of self-love, where you're at the point where you're like, a relationship can be good and also not a relationship can be good. That's when it's like divine empowerment. Okay.
Yeah.
It makes sense. We're running out of time, but I have a few more things.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
You spoke about just made me think about, you saying you had to do so much. You did everything on your own until you found your husband. How did you, was that 4 years of solitude? That was for yourself, but inevitably it was preparing you for your relationship? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's very fair to say.
And so when you found your relationship, you basked in the joy and the bliss that it is, but still also finding the time for sacred alone time. How were you, I guess, courageous enough to do that for yourself? Was that something you guys learned together, that it's necessary? Because I believe in that.
Yeah.
I feel like, I definitely have, like, I love to be affectionate and right there. I love that partnership, but I also love alone time.
Yeah.
And I think, but everyone doesn't see it that way. So I think it's courageous to like have that and live that kind of life. How did you get there?
Yeah, so I'm an only child first, so being by myself has always been medicine for me. Like it's like when I'm alone, I come alive when I'm by myself. But there is a Chinese proverb that says, who you are with your mom is one person, who you are with your husband is one person, who you are with your friends, your grandparents, these are completely different people, but who you are when you're by yourself is the truth of who you are. And so that has always just resonated with me.
Yeah.
But in my 4 years of solitude and celibacy, it wasn't like I'm going to intentionally be celibate for 4 years. I'm going to intentionally sit in solitude for 4 years. It was not that. It was just, I experienced a lot of trauma, and I'm just taking time to focus on myself, and it happened to be 4 years.
Okay.
When my husband and I met one another, I don't know how or why this was conversation, but we were just like, I don't want to be in a relationship. And we weren't even talking in that way. Like, we bonded over meditations, and he sent a meditation that was about Romeo and Juliet. And we were just talking about things that were interesting. It was not sexual or romantic. It was nothing like that. But somehow the conversation came up, and we were very much decided, I don't want to be in a relationship. We were in such a beautiful place by ourselves.
Okay.
There was no desire for a relationship. There was no desire for romantic love. It was just as things started to evolve and how many synchronicities we saw, it was like, is God trying to say we supposed to be together? And that's kind of what it evolved to. And I think I'm sorry, what was the question?
We're talking about sacred alone time.
Yeah,
and having the courage to, once you find that partner, you're so excited, but still being willing.
So once we got together and all of everything that we love started to evolve together, he already had his relationship with himself and God. I already had my relationship with myself and God. And because even getting together is not something that we really were looking for, the individuality of our journey was always prioritized. And when we first really started getting into the romantic space, one of the things that my husband did and still does, he always promised to keep me free. And so even some days he'll randomly ask me, is this something that you still want? Is this a relationship you still want to be a part of? Is our marriage something that still resonates with you? And this is his opportunity in keeping me free, keeping us free. And so there are days where my husband and I, we don't even say a word to each other. There are days where we have intentional silence. There are days where he may sleep downstairs in our extra bedroom.
Yeah.
There's days where I may go off and travel for like 2 weeks by myself with my German Shepherd, or may get, a hotel downtown or something, a Airbnb that's really cool. And on my last day there, I invite him over so we can have time together.
Wow.
Individual time is a non-negotiable. Because in those individual spaces is where you get to hear your spirit. That's where you get those spiritual downloads. That's where you get to hear what your heart is asking you to acknowledge. That's where you get to hear all of those aspects of your being, those versions of yourself that are trying to get your attention. Relationships are beautiful. Love is beautiful, but it can also be a distraction. And sometimes you need time by yourself, even sleeping in the same bed. You've been sharing the same energy with the same person all day.
Wow.
Imagine sometimes your energy just needs to be your energy. Sometimes it's okay for your partner to sleep downstairs. Some women have such a huge issue with that. Sometimes you need to reclaim all of you just for you. And it goes beyond just needing I need time to myself. Now this is like
I'm not
spiritual
upset.
hygiene for you to be able to have this personal time by yourself and reclaim your energy and listen to whatever is supposed to come up for you.
I'm so touched by that. I really am. It's wow. I think that's a big part of why people are scared of marriage, because they're scared of the trap that it's like, oh, you betrayed me, you want alone time. It's like, no, this is so that we can both be healthy.
Yes.
We can choose each other each day. That is such a like powerful, I love that. I love that you get asked that question.
Yeah.
Because it's so loving.
It is.
It really is.
It's the epitome of love. And I think what happens in relationships is partners can be very possessive and they forget the purpose. Remember the purpose, we're individual souls first, supporting each other, and we come together and we support. So if you say you need time by yourself, how can I love you in that process? That doesn't mean I don't love you. What happens is you have some relationships that aren't healthy enough and they don't trust. Right? So trust doesn't play. I don't need to trust my husband. I know what it is, right? So trust doesn't play a part in the factoring of, is this okay or not? I'm never going to step in the way of him honoring whatever his soul is asking me to do, and vice versa. That is like the epitome of dishonoring a person that you love, when you get in the middle of what their spirit is asking them to do for their own soul's evolution. It's not my job to say yes or no. If I love you, it's my job to see how can I support you in that process.
So you guys don't believe in the whole two souls become one?
Well, they do. They do become one. Me and my husband, we are like the same person.
Okay.
We laugh at the same stuff. We do the same stuff.
But it's not a possessive.
But we're not possessive. Like two souls become one don't mean that you can't go on vacation by yourself.
Yeah.
Like we are not objects, and we don't possess one another. Remember, detachment and attachment. Everybody is so quick to talk about, oh, my attachment styles. What attachment comes down to is the fear of not being loved. So I don't care what your attachment style is. The root is always going to be that you're either afraid of not being loved, or you don't know how to receive love because you never got it when you were younger. So when you have people in a relationship who are saying, no, you can't go here without me, or you can't have this time without me. You have people who are afraid of not being loved, and they're afraid of love being taken away, and they don't know how to properly receive the real love. So we don't have that issue because we are individuals, but two souls are one. We do act just alike.
I hear so often there's this kind of like ongoing debate of women not having children. women who don't have children, who choose not to have children, and then there's this, argument like, oh, that's what you were here to do, that's what you were born here to do. If you're not having children, you're not fulfilling your purpose on earth. And just the back and forth, and then all the questions like, you don't have children yet, or when y'all having children, like that kind of thing. How do you feel about that?
Well, I've chosen not to have children.
Okay.
Having children just it doesn't resonate with my spirit. When I was younger, it did though, which is very odd because there was a time where I was like, I want 4 boys. I named them Noah, Shiloh. I had names for them, everything. And in my mind, I thought I was going to have 4 kids by the age of 21. I don't know what I was thinking.
Well, you think it was the big family dynamic?
It was. And I don't know where they came from because I already had a big loving family. So it wasn't like a wounded idea of this is what I need so I can feel fulfilled.
Yeah.
In my mind, I just wanted that. And then as I evolved, it was just like, I actually love my personal time. I love being able to get up and go. I love being able to travel. I love all of the things that come with not being a mom to a child. I love not having that responsibility. Now, I do have 2 cats and a dog. I know some people gonna get mad. They don't think that them real kids. Them real kids to me. I don't care what they say. But when I met my husband, he has a son.
Okay.
And one of my stipulations was I'll never date a man who has children. Not because they had kids, but because I didn't want to deal with any baby mama drama.
Okay. Yeah.
And I wanted to feel chosen. I wanted to have I wanted to be the one, like, if we do have kids, I want to be the first person to have kids. Like, I want to have that experience with you. I don't want to share that experience with anybody. And it was more of those selfish reasons or self-full reasons, because they're not bad reasons.
Yeah.
And I wanted someone where we were doing everything together the first time.
Yeah.
And I also was like, if I choose not to have kids, I want that person to also be someone who doesn't want to have kids. I just wanted to be on the same page.
Yeah.
But then when I met my husband and everything was kind of like perfect.
Yeah.
His son was amazing because it was never about the actual child. It was about those just connection things, like first memory type things.
Got it.
And I remember talking to my husband, and I don't know how the conversation came up, but he used to always remind me, like, you have so many kids. Like, how many people you teach, how many people you guide, you nurture, and acknowledging that these are still lives that you are helping evolve.
Yeah.
And so when women have the story of, if you aren't birthing children, you're not fulfilling your purpose. Or remember, to birth anything is to help it evolve. And so everything that I do on a daily basis is helping people evolve into the truth of who they are. And I'm helping them evolve back into their inner child. So there isn't one way to birth something. You can birth an idea that help other people evolve. And there is not one way to nurture something. It doesn't have to just be the nurturing of a baby. There's so many people who nurture people on their deathbed in hospice. You mean to tell me if they never had a child, but they're helping someone transition into another realm of life, that their position doesn't matter? You have women who will never have children, but they help other women give birth, right? They have that access to being present into another woman's portal. And so you mean that position doesn't matter as well? And so I think it just comes down to, one, you do what works for you. I would never want to be somebody who was shamed into having a baby because society told me that that's what I was supposed to do. I'm going to do what works best for me. I'm going to honor myself, and I'm going to choose to provide my nurturing abilities to anybody that comes into my reality. And it doesn't just have to be a baby. And most people who got kids don't need to have them in the first place because they cause more trauma then they do the proper love, the proper evolution to begin with. So I know if I want to make sure that the love I give, the nurturing I give, the support I give, I want to make sure that I'm giving it in a proper way. And I have so many people who are already here that need that love, need that nurturing, need that attention, and need that support. I don't need to bring another life into this reality to give that to them when there's so many people who already need it and want it.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Because I'm like,
Yeah.
it's not giving.
Right. It's not giving. It's not giving.
It's just not giving that. And I was struggling, but I love that you come and shared you've just shared so much. I could have cried a couple of times. I don't know why I didn't. I don't know why I'm not emotional.
Yeah.
Normally I'm like crying. But I am so honored. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for everything that you have shared today. So powerful. I am always like blessed just to be able to sit with women like yourself who are doing the work, who have done the work, and who are showing up for me and for all. Like you said, you're nurturing us all for sure.
Thank
for sure.
you.
So I'm really grateful. This came right on time. So many of the things that we talked about today are just something that I'm personally working through. That's probably why I made the questions.
Yeah, but, for sure.
But even things that I didn't anticipate us speaking about. So I'm so glad I asked that last question.
Yeah.
I'm really glad that we got that in. And so before we go, I want to definitely want you to talk to that camera, let them know where they can find you, everything that you have going on. I know you have a book. Let everyone know in that camera, and then we're going to close. We're going to do a couple of drops, and we'll be done.
Awesome. What's up, everybody? I am Candyss Love. I am an intuitive guide. I help people heal through their emotional trauma. I typically guide regular people, psychiatrists, therapists, psychologists, and I help people learn how to heal, grow, and evolve from real intuitiveness and no longer regurgitated information from books. I'm also an author. You can purchase my book, Remember Who the Fuck You Are, at CandissLove.com. I also host retreats. My husband and I host meditation and emotional healing retreats in Tulum, Mexico. And what else do I do, babe? I also have my own organic skincare line. All skincare products are made from herbs. You can find that at Sasha Flowers Skincare on Instagram and online. Is there anything else? Oh, and if you are in Houston, I also host weekly and monthly community events with my husband. We host a Sundays with Source, that is a meditation and emotional healing event. We also have a Houston's very first supper club, vegan supper club in Houston as well. If you're interested, all of that information is on my Instagram at Candyss Love.
That's it, guys. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Yes.